The JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series is well known for its completely different parts. The mangaka Araki tries in each part to focus on what's trending or relevant to that generation, and that's one of the biggest reasons for JoJo's fame: its diversity, creativity, excitement, and adventures. In this video, we want to talk about all the JoJo characters, starting from Jodio Joestar and ending with Jodio Joestar. Then compare them to real-life figures who share similarities in traits, habits, or appearance. These people may be celebrities, widely known public figures, or even fictional characters from other anime. As a reminder, this video is purely for entertainment and not based on scientific facts, so we welcome your suggestions for characters who might be a better match than the ones we mentioned in the video. We look forward to your opinions. And with that, let's start with the first part. The first part of the series was released in the late 80s, specifically in 1987. The protagonist, Jodio Joestar, is a noble and highly idealistic character from a wealthy family, with no trace of evil. He fights evil to bring about justice, and he's physically strong and tall. At the time of Jodio, the most popular anime characters were strong heroes battling evil, and Jodio was no exception. He trained for 7 years to prepare for his fight against Dio. Araki drew inspiration for Jodio from Kenshiro, the character who defends the weak and fights for justice in the anime Fist of the North Star, which was an iconic anime at the time.
ジョナサンはかなり今見ると本当いい子すぎるなみたいなね。今書くとしたらね、もっとジョナサンの心の弱いところとかね、そういうところも書いてったんだろうけど、そういう感じになってますね。
In the 1980s, that generation was somewhat obsessed with idealistic and noble characters and traditions, which most anime heroes embodied. Moving to the second part, we have Josuke Joestar, a character who is always one step ahead of everyone. Joseph loves trouble, he's a major prankster, full of energy, and unbeatable in terms of trickery. He's physically strong and tall. Joseph's character aligns with an era when bodybuilding and fitness were in the spotlight, especially figures like Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose influence extended to his acting career in films like The Terminator. Joseph could be seen as a fun, strong version of Arnold. Both are strong, charismatic, and fun-loving. And coincidentally, both cheated on their wives and had children with other women. In the third part, Joseph as an older character even resembles an older Arnold. Next, we move to the third part, which marked a turning point, especially with the introduction of stand abilities for the characters. This part ended in 1992, bringing us into the 90s when rebellious figures, or what were known as bad boys, were all the rage. These characters typically solved problems with violence and brute force, and Jotaro perfectly embodies this persona. Jotaro is ranked third in terms of muscle mass compared to Jodio and Joseph, has a sharp tongue, rarely smiles, and usually displays a cold or angry expression. Araki based Jotaro on Clint Eastwood's character in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, who was skilled in combat and had a distinctive way of moving between places. Jotaro's famous finger-pointing pose was even inspired by one of Eastwood's Magnum gun poses. On another note, Jotaro also resembles a 90s rapper, particularly 50 Cent, known for his tough, charismatic personality and resilience. 50 Cent famously survived being shot 9 times, reminding me of Jotaro's debut in prison, when he shot himself to prove the existence of his stand, Star Platinum. Higashikata Josuke, the protagonist of the fourth part, is very different from the previous JoJos. His appearance and hairstyle resemble that of a Yakuza member, a style he copied from the person who saved his life during a snowstorm when he was a child. Josuke is kind-hearted and gentle, a mix of Joseph and Jodio.
やっぱり、ジョースケっていう3部までの主人公っていうのはね、こう神話的っていう、その辺分かるかどうか分かりませんけど、こうギリシャ神話のこうヒーローみたいなのを作ってるイメージだったのが、こう4部の主人公はこう隣のお兄さんっていうか、自分の友達っていうか、そうですね、ちょっと神話的なよりは日常の隣の親しみやすいキャラクター。
Josuke represents a trend that started in Japan in the early 70s, where rebellious middle schoolers, mostly from working-class backgrounds, would form gangs led by the strongest among them. These gangs later became real Yakuza gangs as they grew older. This bancho culture is the inspiration for Josuke's hairstyle and gang-like appearance. The fifth part brings a change in Araki's drawing style. For the first time, we see a protagonist with an average physique for someone his age, reflecting a shift in anime where overly muscular characters were no longer the norm. The Joestar of this part is Giorno Giovanna, a handsome, well-dressed character with a reserved personality.
だからあんまり、まあ男が重要ですね。どっちかというと美しい男たち。
その美しい男たち。まあ女性もいたりしますけど。
いますけども、美しい男たちを描くっていうのがなんかメインです。
He faced abuse from his stepfather as a child, but is incredibly intelligent. Personally, I find it unrealistic that someone his age would be that smart. Despite Golden Experience being the most powerful stand in the series so far, many fans find Bucciarati, the gang leader, more charismatic than Giorno. However, Giorno's strength lies in his determination and willingness to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the gang. After some thought, I believe the best comparison for Giorno would be Tom Cruise. Both are physically fit, tall, and determined. And Tom Cruise is known for putting himself in dangerous situations in his films, much like Giorno does in his missions. Now we move on to part 6, and as always, Araki surprises us with something new. This time, he chooses to make the protagonist a girl, and not just any girl, but the daughter of the veteran Jotaro. Jolyne is a young woman characterized by her above-average height and a sporty build that sets her apart from other women her age. She has a rough personality, is quick to anger, and has mood swings, traits she inherited from her father. Jolyne dislikes her circumstances and often complains. She's rebellious against her environment and enjoys causing trouble. Her relationship with her father is strained, as she resents him for being absent from her life for so long. To get his attention, she commits numerous petty crimes. Eventually, she finds herself in prison after trying to cover for Romeo, who exploited her, leading to a 15-year sentence. Of course, her character will take a turn towards maturity. She will learn to be more composed and will eventually realize that her father truly cares about her and loves her. I'll stop here as I don't want to spoil the story for new fans of the series. Also, an important point. Many believe that Stone Ocean is influenced by the series Prison Break, which is noticeable given that the series revolves around prisons and escapes, and it was trending during that era. However, the surprise is that Part 6 of JoJo was released between 1999 and 2003, which is before the first episode of Prison Break. In my opinion, the singer and former actress Miley Cyrus could be a good representation of Jolyne's character before her maturity. Miley gained fame for her role as Hannah Montana in a show for children and teens, only to rebel against that character and undergo a complete transformation after being a role model for the millennial generation. She intentionally embraced wild behavior, such as dancing provocatively, using marijuana, and living a chaotic romantic life in public, before burying the beloved Hannah character after her song Wrecking Ball. We know that Jolyne won't go to such extremes, but she shares some wild traits with Miley. Lastly, Miley Cyrus also has her own issues with her father, much like Jolyne. Now we move on to Part 7. In this part, Araki decided to take a step back and change his approach compared to the previous parts. Instead of keeping up with modern trends, he took the story back in time, specifically to the year 1890, set during a historic race across the United States. It's a completely new style, and what made it even more intriguing is that, perhaps for the first time in manga history, we have an action-packed adventure with a protagonist who is paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. But that's not all. Johnny's character is deeply dark and psychologically broken. After being shot in the leg, he spent the rest of his life depressed and had a strained relationship with his father, who loved his older brother more. We all know by now how complex Johnny's character is, and the real challenge would be finding an actor or public figure who represents these traits while also dealing with paralysis. The character that most reminds me of Johnny is Jigsaw. Like Johnny, Jigsaw was confined to a chair, and his dark, extreme personality showed in the way he punished criminals through incredibly brutal and sadistic methods. While their goals and actions differ, there is a similarity in their deeply complex personalities.
I'll help you.
I don't need your help, and I can tell you still don't understand. Those who don't appreciate life do not deserve life.
Another name that comes to mind is Stephen Hawking, who also lived with a condition that paralyzed his body. But unlike Johnny, Stephen was never a dark or depressed person. In fact, his traits are completely different. He was incredibly optimistic and refused to ask for help, preferring to struggle through challenges on his own. This is quite the opposite of Johnny, who was more inclined to seek help. Additionally, Stephen wanted to solve the world's problems, a trait that Johnny, with his selfish nature, would likely have no interest in. Lastly, the famous actor from Breaking Bad, Walter White Jr., shares some of Johnny's arrogance. Fans of the show may recall scenes where he was willing to sacrifice himself, a trait Johnny also displays. Part 8. Jojolands. In this arc, JoJo is once again named Josuke, a very slender character who wears a mariner's outfit, embodying the new character designs that manga artists have started to adopt. Josuke has lost his memory and is searching for his identity in this world, while also building new relationships. He reminds me a lot of the protagonist from the movie Memento, written by the legendary filmmaker Christopher Nolan, known for his famous films The Dark Knight, Inception, The Prestige, and others. The protagonist of Memento, despite having a different type of amnesia, suffers from progressive memory loss. After a certain period, he forgets any new information he learns, forcing him to record it through tattoos on his body to remember it later. This made the film's script brilliant, weaving together exciting and even humorous events. I won't spoil it for you. The structure and pacing of the movie are also incredibly unique, and you might be surprised, or even confused, if you're not paying attention or don't grasp the film's concept. If you haven't seen it yet, don't let anyone spoil it for you. Watch it and then come back to this video to leave a comment and share your thoughts on the movie. The character Guy Pearce played in Memento has a build that resembles Part 8 Josuke. While both characters suffer from memory loss in different ways, I believe their innocence, problem-solving methods, and interactions with events are quite similar. Finally, we arrive at Part 9, featuring the character Jodio Joestar. Of course, our judgments might be premature, and our choice might not be entirely accurate since the part is only at Chapter 18, but we already know quite a bit about Jodio. He cares deeply about his family, more than anything else, and is willing to commit crimes or do whatever it takes for the happiness of his older brother, Dragona. He deals drugs and is deeply involved in the criminal world. Jodio has been diagnosed as mentally unstable, plays video games, and feels no remorse after hurting others, especially if they anger him. The story takes place between 2021 and the present day, and it's clear that Araki intentionally designed Jodio to represent Generation Z teens, those who often suffer from social anxiety, spend most of their time on their phones, and experience high levels of anxiety. I mention this because Araki might reveal additional traits about Jodio that's related to Gen Z. I concluded that Jodio is highly comparable to Walter White. Both sell drugs, both love their families. Walter entered the world of crime primarily for his family, and both are socially unstable. They analyze situations rationally and make hard decisions most of the time. The wealth Jodio seeks may be similar to the one Walter White pursued after knowing he had cancer and realizing he wouldn't leave anything for his family. Heisenberg's controlling, manipulative, and remorseless persona will undoubtedly align closely with Jodio's future development. Of course, there are clear differences between them. The first was a chemistry teacher who was forced into the drug business for his family, although that path shifted as the series progressed. Meanwhile, Jodio has his own goals, driven by a personal philosophy connected to mechanisms.